our makeup. And what they did was put it into a little package that we can kind of follow and use that, and we can study it and apply it to our lives consciously. So it's very cool. And I'd like to acknowledge Hal Putoff, Ingo Swan, and Russell Targ, because I'm really grateful for them. And they're all so approachable and engaging. And, you know, anytime you have a question about anything, they are so happy to help, because I think they're so passionate and they want all of us to be passionate too. And this is kind of at the bottom is this kind of all around, uh, I would say, definition of how they come up with the definition of the remote viewing that they talk about. But I'm going to kind of go into it a little bit more in detail. So I'm not even going to bother reading that, because you can probably read that. But let's just jump in here. So a lot of people come up to me and they're like, I'll say, "Oh, are you familiar with remote viewing?" And they're like, "Yeah." And then they're talking about remote viewing in a whole different way than what I'm talking about with remote viewing. So I thought that I might kind of figure out a way to differentiate between the two kinds of remote viewing. And they're both being psychic. But when we do something, I guess I kind of named it formal remote viewing versus freestyle remote viewing, in a way to kind of categorize it. I don't think these are official terms or anything, but it's just a way to get the communication out to you. So when we're talking about formal remote viewing, or anytime I'm talking about remote viewing, and a lot of the people that have been talking in this whole event, Dale and things like that, we are talking about something that is trained and has a defined protocol that we follow, which has usually three main components. So you have your manager, who kind of sets up the project and will kind of come up with the question, and we call it the secret question, because our viewers are blind. And I think that I think people have talked about what blind means. Blind, I'll just to repeat it, blind just means that you do not know what the target is. And that is a term that's really used in science. And so, you know, I wouldn't say remote viewing is perfectly scientific, based on a lot of our scientists and universities would not probably like some of the things we do, but we do as much as we can to create scientific projects based on something that is intangible. We don't really have measurements for some of the things that we do. So we try to stay as close as possible to what they are familiar with in terms of a scientific method. So we have the management, where they set up the project, you have the viewer, and then you have a feedback session, which means that after you're done doing a session, at the end, you get to see what you're viewing. And then, and it's just as important as any other part, because that is the place where we literally learn what we learn from our sessions. And we're going to get a lot into that today about what's going on when we're remote viewing. The other thing is we use pen and paper. We sketch and describe things, and all that stuff is documented. There's a whole bunch of researchers that use different methods to document people's sessions. Sometimes they use spreadsheets and they put the words in there. Some people use a what we call Targ scale, but Russell doesn't like us calling it a Targ scale because he's so humble. But it is a way to rate somebody's session or what they're getting. So we use a lot of that in our research for this. So we do collect all the data. And basically, in the formal remote viewing, you're projecting your subconscious to focus on a specific target. And in the formal, you can sometimes have a monitor or sometimes no monitor. And what I was thinking about the freestyle remote viewing is it's an ability that people seem to have. They just have an ability, and it's based on guided imagery. They imagine themselves at the location, and they get images, and they are able to report those images. And sometimes that information comes in spontaneously. And usually they know what the target is, and they don't really have monitors. So usually the freestyle are people that do readings for people, or if somebody is looking, maybe they lost a ring or something, and they ask a psychic, like, can you tune in and help me find my ring? And then right on the spot, they can just kind of tune in and, report images that they're getting. They don't generally use pen and paper and sketch things. Their intention is not for science, it's just to help people out. They're really good with helping with missing persons, as well as formal remote viewing too. So there are a lot of similarities, and then there's also this kind of structure in the formal that just kind of makes it different. So hopefully that gives you a little bit better of a idea of kind of the difference between what we're talking about and then this kind of freestyle remote viewing. Okay. So this is really important to me, is the benefits of remote viewing. This it's endless. I put on the bottom, I'm just skipping ahead, much more. It's like should be much more. But the first thing is self-improvement. And sometimes in my class, we have targets where we ask personal questions about ourselves or things like that. One time I had a partner, and we would do fun experiments between the two of us. They were not really formal or anything. And one time the target was, what foods should Michelle stay away from? Of course, I was blind to that, but he just gave me a target number, and he just said, here, I have a target for you. So I did it. And it was interesting because in my session, I wrote like DNA and GMO and some soft, squishy thing that I think might be mushrooms. I don't know, but it did end up answering that question, what foods should I stay away from? And GMOs make sense to me, that I shouldn't be, eating GMOs. Another thing that I do for my students is we go back to, they don't know this, but they're going back to a past life where they learned some skill in that life, and I ask them to bring that skill to this life. Maybe I would say something like, go back to a past life and bring back a skill that helps you become a better remote viewer, or something that will help them in their life, or something like that. So that's pretty cool. And when they send me their sessions, they're just amazing, what they come up with. And it really helps them answer a lot of questions that they don't have. And you could just be so creative with remote viewing on certain questions. We also have a MedApps kind of where we can help people with certain physical discomforts. And what we're looking for is, what is the origin of it? So we had somebody that was having chronic pain in their knee, and we asked the question, what is the origin of that knee pain? And it turned out that the session showed that people were getting information about a loved one that had passed on. And basically what we deduced from it was that this person that had us do this session was having trouble moving on after the death of her husband. And so, and that made sense, that it would be a pain in her knee that would make it hard for her to walk. So that it was just sometimes we get information that we just don't expect, and that's really fun too. Predicting future outcomes. So we did a dream study with Dale, and this was fantastic. We did 52 trials where we were predicting a future outcome of a sporting event. And what we did was we would get a target on Friday, and we'd set an intention to have a dream about a photo